What I'm going to do for this how-to is two things. First, I'm going to explain what a base number system is, and then secondly, I'm going to explain the impact of going from a base 10 to a base 8 world has on your understanding of temporal space, specifically when it comes to anniversaries and the rollover effect of going from one placeholder to the next has on your understanding of significance. First, what is a base number system? It is simply the unique characters that reside within the ones place. For example, the base 10 number system has 10 unique characters that reside within its ones place, 0 to 9. The reason that we have a base 10 system is because we have 10 fingers. But because there are abilities to have other systems of counting, specifically base 8, or binary with base 2, we can have or imagine different worlds that would exist if we were to live in them. For example, a good thought experiment would be if you were to live in the Yuki tribe of Southern California. They did not count the number of fingers that they had, but they had a base 8 system where they counted the number of spaces between their fingers. What is the impact that that has on your understanding of temporal space, and specifically what is the impact that has on the significance that you place on anniversaries that come every 10 years or come every, in a base 8 world, come every 8 years.
To get into the second part of my how-to, understanding how a change from base 10 world to a base 8 world has an effect on your understanding of temporal space. My general hypothesis is that a change from a base 10 world to a base 8 world will have a noticeable change on how a given society responds to events. First, to define some things. First, look at my graph. The y-axis on my graph is what I would define as noticeable, or what society deems as important, or generally what is the rate at which people are talking about certain events. It's the metric of change or impact on a certain idea. This could be measured in a lot of different ways. It could be the number of Twitter entries, the number of hashtag 9/11 never forget, or hashtag remember the 5th of November. Or it could be the number of political speeches given on certain anniversaries, or it could also be the number of people who attend anniversary rallies. It's just how many people are actually holding ideas, what is noticeable. Second is the x-axis. It's over here. It is the number of days that exist. It's the number of times around the sun. It is what we define as years. To understand this theory even more, there needs to be two assumptions made. First, the assumption that anniversaries have impacts. The general idea that the 99th anniversary is always less important than the 100th anniversary. This goes into the definition of noticeable, or the y-axis. The second assumption is that there is a special rollover effect when you have gone from a placeholder to another. For example, changing from a decimal place to a ones place, to a tens place, to the hundreds place, or thousands place. All of those changes in placeholders has a special effect on how society views those impacts. Now to understand the graph. Okay, the first line is just a general rate of error line. It's for every kind of graph that you would have. It's just the general predictability of a decrease in how many people are noticing the event. For example, at the very beginning of the event, for example 9/11, 100% of the population, or 100% of the metric of noticeability, is going to be the highest. But as time goes on, or as the x value continues with the number of days around the sun, the number of people talking, or the number of Twitter handles that are hashtag remember 9/11 go down substantially. So if you were to take each base world, for example this one, the bottom one, is a base 10 world, where every time our anniversary happens in intervals of 10. For example, here is an anniversary, more people are talking about it on the 10th anniversary, here's the 20th, and then this is the 30th. The second line is a base 8 world, where you have the anniversary happening in two ways differently. It happens sooner, it happens only 8 times around the sun, but also the period between each event or anniversary is smaller. Okay, looking further at the graph, the understanding that the periods and also the relative distance between the first anniversary is like shorter when you live in a base 8 world, it leads to impacts where anniversaries have more say on how policies are made. If you look at the 9/11 example, the likelihood that nationalistic or protectionist ideologies come out more or sooner is more likely. Clearest example of this is if you look at the graph, the total span of time is 34 years, but in 34 years, the number of times that an anniversary or a significant rollover anniversary occurs in a base 8 world is 4 times, while in a base 10 world it only happens 3 times. Overarchingly, there is more likelihood that an anniversary would have an actual impact on how people do calculuses within their policy decisions, and I think generally that the base change would have a great impact on how people understand their temporal space. Some more impacts of having a base 8 world is that we would not have decades, we would have octaves. The idea is that you would have groupings of time based on the spectrum of centuries be smaller. The century would be 64 years instead of 100 years because a century is based off of the special rollover effect that occurs when you're going from, in a base 10 world, going from 1/10th place to the 100th place. What that means is that people will organize their lives around octaves or centuries that are based in base 8. This would have great effect on just general day-to-day life. For example, in classes, I'm taking 20th century political thought. What that would mean is that the political thought of the 20th century would be 64 years and not 100 years. The typical divisions between lines of understanding get smaller, and that, for example, if you were an 80s person, you would actually be only an 80s person for those 8 years in that box. But in a base 10 world, you'd be an 80s person for 10 years. So any environment or change in time or significant anniversary that would be happening would be shorter, and that each box that people are put into or identified with would be smaller